I cheated, but never did I ever think my husband would take such revenge. Hello, people of Reddit. Today I'll share my experience as to how I lost the best thing that ever happened to me just because of my greed and my desire to get something better than what I already had. I hope that my experience makes everyone realize to value the relationships they have and to not seek something else. I, female. 26, was married to my ex-husband, male, 28, for 2 years. We got married straight after college. My ex joined a corporate job with a high package while I became a housewife. Me and my ex-husband met in college. We had different courses, but a common group of friends. It brought us closer, and ultimately we started dating. It wasn't meant to be anything serious. We both were just testing waters at that time, but as we spent more time in each other's company, we fell in love and decided to get married. Our marriage life was going as well as it could. My ex had to work long hours because it was his job after getting graduated, and he was set on making a name for himself. I had told him that I'll support him in his dream in every way I can. We were young, and everything felt doable in the initial phase of the marriage. I thought that it wasn't a big deal if my husband had to work late hours at work. I tried to be an understanding wife, but failed miserably. I used to keep scrolling Instagram. People my age were partying with their partner. Someone was going on a trip, whereas I was in the kitchen waiting for my husband to get back home. It started to get to me. I told my ex-husband that we can also take a break and go on some vacation, but he would tell me that we will go just later. At that point, he had too many responsibilities. He promised me that he will do everything to get rich. We had a good home. We were still paying the debt. We had a decent living, it's just that we were really poor, but we weren't Porsche rich, and my ex-husband wanted to get to that level. He had told me in college itself that he wants to become a really big man. I thought that since I was in love with him, it would be easy to support him and be there with him while he worked a life he really wanted. I was going to enjoy the benefits of luxury life as well with him. Turned out that doing that wasn't really easy. We were recent college graduates at that point of time. Everyone was enjoying life and showing it off on their social media handles. I would get jealous of them enjoying their life, but then try to let that feeling go. This started affecting our married life as well. My ex-husband would come late after work, and then I would start telling him whatever I saw on social media about our friends and stuff. 2 things happened after that. Either he would ignore what I was telling him, or he would just make some small vague comment about it like, "Oh, okay," and all. I would get irritated by his reaction and start fighting with him. He was already tired, and then when I started fighting with him, he would get really mad. We stopped talking to each other for many days, and then started talking again when our anger was gone. I felt like he wasn't seeing the sacrifices that I was making for him. I wanted him to value it and appreciate me. I told him the same thing when we were having an argument one day. He got really upset and told me that he did see my efforts, but I was forgetting that whatever he was doing was for our future only. I didn't like the way we fought, but there was no other option left for me. I was frustrated and felt trapped inside our house and in that marriage. My ex and I started getting distant with each other. When I think about it now, the distance was caused partially because of me, but at that point I thought that it was his fault. I was upset at him for not removing the gap between us. Our fight didn't decrease. I would keep telling him how he has changed after marriage and all, whenever I said that all. He would get really angry and then stomp out of the house, shutting the doors, with so much more that it felt like the door was going to break. We started speaking less with each other. Every time we spoke, it was either something related to the house or something that had to be done. I felt even more frustrated as I felt that I was making all these great efforts for my husband's success, and we aren't even happy with each other even after that. Days went like these, and we didn't even talk to each other properly. I was upset that he didn't try to talk to me. Suddenly one day he started talking to me over dinner. He told me that there was some work event and he would like to be there with him. It was sort of an office party. He smiled at me and I smiled back at him. We were finally going to a party, even though it was work-related, and I was really excited. The day of the party, I went to get my nails and hair done. It was long overdue anyway, and this seemed like a good day to go for that. I got ready and left for the party with my husband. It was quite a nice party. The venue was great, and the decorations were on point as well. It was at the rooftop of some 5-star hotel and had a very nice view of the city. I loved being there. For the first time, I was doing something fun. My husband then introduced me to everyone. He had colleagues who were all his age. Everyone was polite. I finally met his boss at that party. When my husband introduced us, I just kept staring at him. He was a very attractive man, slightly older than my husband, but really good on the eyes. He smiled at me and then asked my husband how he was able to spend so much time at work when had such a pretty wife at home. My eyes widened at his statement. He was complimenting me. My husband just smiled at him and told him that I was an understanding wife. I felt a bit of guilt then. I hadn't been understanding at all. I thought that I'll do better from that day onwards. We met more people and had drinks with his colleagues. Everything was going great. There was only one thing. I caught his boss staring towards us more times than one. I thought to myself that it couldn't be a coincidence that every time I looked in his direction, he was looking at me. I ignored that feeling in my stomach and tried to enjoy the party. The party was great. We came back around midnight and both were so tired that we immediately fell asleep. The next day, my husband got busy with his work again. Even though I had decided to be more understanding of each work, it wasn't coming to me. I just felt irritated and upset, but I didn't fight with him again. Days passed like this again. I wasn't really happy, but I made sure that we were civil to each other. It was one afternoon that my husband called for dinner and told me that his boss was coming home for dinner that evening. I asked him why suddenly. I didn't know he was going to invite him that day. He told me it was a Friday night and they were casually talking and his boss mentioned something about having homemade food in the city, so he invited him. He told me that it would have been if he hadn't. I agreed with him and asked him what I should cook. He told me that he will be home early to help me out and that he can pick whatever I need from the grocery store. After the call ended, I started cleaning up the house and all. I started preparing for dinner. My husband came in when I was in the kitchen. He helped me out in the kitchen and then told me that I can go get ready while he'll be here. I nodded at him. I wasn't going to meet his boss in sweatpants. I couldn't decide what to wear. For some reason, I wanted his boss to find me pretty. It was entirely illogical and made no sense, but I wanted that. I got ready and even did some makeup. It was like a no makeup look. When I went down, the boss had already arrived. He was sitting in the living room with a flower bouquet in his hands. He saw me and got up and gave me the bouquet. I was really impressed by him. He was really attractive and charming as well. I smiled at him, and he gave me a smile which seemed flirtatious, but then I thought I was making things up. We had dinner together. He kept telling me constantly that he really liked the food. My husband was happy with that. His boss then told me that I had to give him my recipe for the apple pie because it was really delicious. I told him sure, and then we exchanged numbers so that I can share the recipe with him. The evening went smoothly and he soon left. My husband thanked me for arranging everything so quickly, and I told him it was no problem. We then cleaned up everything and then headed for bed. My husband had to leave for work early the next morning, so slept immediately. I was awake and was scrolling through social media when I got a text from his boss. It was a simple, "Thank you for the delicious dinner," but it made my heartbeat go really fast. I replied to him that it was my pleasure, and that was the end of the conversation. As I looked to the side and saw my sleeping husband, I felt a pang of guilt for crushing on his boss, but I couldn't help it. It wasn't that anything was going to happen between us. It was just a silly crush, I told myself as I went to sleep. After a few days, I got a text from my husband's boss while my husband was in the office. He told me that he loved pie and needed the recipe. I shared it with him, but our conversation didn't end there. He kept making small talk to me, and I also engaged in that conversation with him. At that point, it didn't seem like I was doing something wrong. I just felt that I was having a friendly conversation with my husband's boss. We kept exchanging texts all the time. He was really witty and charming. It was nice to talk to someone like this, especially since I didn't talk to my husband like this anymore. It was a bittersweet feeling, but we kept talking. My husband was so busy with work that he didn't even notice that my attention was completely somewhere else, and for the first time I wasn't bothered by his lack of attention to me. I kept texting his boss usually when my husband was in the office. I found it weird that my husband couldn't make time for me, but his boss could. I thought that maybe I wasn't just a priority to my husband. Days passed like this. I was going to the mall one day to go shopping. When I asked my husband for money before he left for his office, he gave me just a few hundred and said that we should save money right now as we have to pay the home debt and everything. It was really irritating. Every time I asked him for something, he would tell me that we should save and list me some different expenses. I didn't say anything to him and went to the mall. I bumped into my husband's boss there. I didn't tell him that I was going to be here, so it was a surprise. He asked me what I was getting, and I just shrugged and told him that I was window shopping. He told me that he was bored as well and just came here to pass the time. He asked me if I wanted to hang out together. I nodded at him and we went to random stores just laughing and enjoying each other's company. My eyes fell on a limited edition LV bag. It was way off my budget, so I just looked with desire and longing but then kept it back. The boss had noticed it and told me to get the bag. I laughed and told him that I can't. He told me to get the bag and that he will take care of it. I couldn't accept such an expensive bag from him, and I told him the same. He then started talking to the salesperson and then bought the bag. I just kept staring at him in shock as he gave his card and bought the bag, which was worth $3,000. I was shocked that was doing that for me. I was also really impressed as spending such a big amount wasn't a big thing for me, whereas my husband kept fretting when he had to give a few $100. He then gave me the bag and told me it was a thank you from his side for dinner the other day. I was still in shock about everything. I came from a middle-class family. I wasn't used to this type of lavish purposes. I came from a family where we discussed the smallest expenses and only made it when it was absolutely necessary. My crush on him had intensified that day. I was still in a daze when I entered my house with that bag. My husband noticed the huge bag in my hand and asked me what I got. I showed him the bag, but instead of getting happy like I expected him to, he started asking all these questions about how much money I spent in that bag and where I got the money. I got irritated and then decided it's better to not tell him the truth. I told him that it wasn't expensive and I had thrifted it from a thrift store. He was confused as to whether he should believe me or not, but then finally believed me. He said that it made sense and where will I get the money to buy the bag directly from the store? I nodded at him and then took my bag to my closet and kept it properly. I didn't talk to him about anything further related to the bag. He got busy with his work again, and I started texting his boss. I told him that it was really thoughtful of him to give me the bag. We used to text each other back and forth throughout the day. At that point, it seemed like he knew me more than my husband does. That was because he actually gave me time, unlike my husband who had neither time nor money. I immediately felt bad for having this thought. The boss had a lot of interest in my hobbies and how I spent my time alone at home. Everything I told him, he listened with interest. My husband had called me on a Monday to tell me that his boss had asked him to go out to town for a work meeting that night. He came home and packed his bag and then left for the airport. I was alone that night and was in my bed texting his boss about my day and stuff. We had become sort of friends at this point. He was 30 years old and single and lived alone in his fancy apartment. He was funny and charming and really attractive. He asked me that since I was alone, we could have dinner together the next day. I didn't need much convincing and agreed instantly. I couldn't wait to see where he would take me for dinner. Me and my husband only ate at home and rarely took takeouts because that was cheaper than going and having dinner in the restaurants. I never got the chance to dress fancy, but I felt that I was finally getting my chance to enjoy everything. When my husband called me the next day to ask how things were at home, I told him everything was fine. I was confused as to whether to tell him that I was going for dinner with his boss or not. I decided it's better to not share that with him. He would have asked too many questions, and I wasn't ready for those questions at that point of time. I got ready just in time as the doorbell rang, and the boss was standing on the door waiting for me. We got to his car and made our way to the restaurant. He took me for dinner at a very high-class restaurant. I had expected that. We were taken to a secluded booth which gave us privacy. I didn't know how to feel about the situation. I was sitting in a top-rated restaurant in the city with my husband's boss. I decided to not overthink and just go with the flow. He ordered me wine, and after a few drinks, we started flirting with each other more directly than we did on texts. It was refreshing to experience this with him. My husband used to flirt with me before we got married, but then responsibilities took over and the romance took a back seat. That night, flirting was on the front seat again, and I loved every second of it. I was tipsy, and I don't know what came over me as I went to his side of the booth and then kissed him on the cheeks. We suddenly kissed each with lots of passion, and it seemed so good. I had never in my dreams thought about kissing someone in such a fancy place. After some time, as I realized what I was doing, I pulled back from him. It hit me what I had done. I started feeling guilt for going behind my husband's back like this. Boss started comforting me, telling me it was okay, and I had done nothing wrong. The way he comforted me made me more emotional, and I hugged him again. He then took me to his house. He knew that I was attracted to him, and I knew he was attracted to me as well. That night, I slept with him. I had thought to not think about the consequences and enjoy this small, good part of my life. My husband called me while I was at my boss's house only. He told me that he was going to the airport and would be home by the evening. I told him that I can't wait for him to come back to me. I then cursed myself for telling that to him. We didn't like that to each other anymore. Even if he didn't know that something was wrong before, he would know now. I facepalmed myself and then started to get ready to get back to my home. I didn't think that I was going to meet the boss again. I had only thought that it was a one-night thing. I smiled at him as I didn't want things to get awkward and then made my way to exit his house. But then he stopped me before I could leave. He asked me when he would see me again. I was confused as to what he was trying to ask. He repeated then that he wanted to see and that one night wasn't enough. I felt happy that he wanted me like that, but I was also confused as to how I could do this behind my husband's back without him finding out about this. I voiced my concern to him, and he told me that I need not worry about anything. He will make sure that my husband doesn't get to know. I believed him because I also wanted to meet him again. I knew I was doing the wrong thing, but I couldn't control myself. I wanted this man a lot. He told me that he will make plans for us and let me know via text. He kissed me again, and then I left for my home. My husband came back in the evening just as I was done cooking his favorite pasta for him. He seemed happy. He told me that his work has gone really well and he can soon expect a promotion. I was happy for him, but in my head I was thinking, will he be able to treat me like his boss does even after getting promotion? I was so confused as to what I was doing in my life. Was I making a mistake, or I was grabbing the lifetime opportunity of having fun and enjoying the luxuries that I was not going to get with my husband? I didn't let my doubts change my decision. I deserved to have fun. So I started seeing my husband's boss behind his back. He would text me the location, and I would meet him there while my husband was at work. His boss made sure that my husband was stacked with work so we could get enough time together. I felt a little bad that he was so occupied from work because of my selfish desires. But then the boss told me that my husband liked to work. He was enjoying it. I knew that was true because he liked spending more time at work than with me. I let the guilt go and enjoyed the moments. Boss always had some or other expensive gift for me. It was like he knew what was going to make me happy. Sometimes he would get me makeup and skincare from celebrity brands. Sometimes he would just randomly take me to stores like Dior and let me pick whatever I wanted. I thrived on his attention. I couldn't remember the last time I was so happy in my life. I made sure that I hid all the gifts in the closet so that my husband would never find out about them. I had no explanation if he ever came to find out about that. Boss took care of all my needs. Everything I wanted, he made sure I got. I made sure that we were happy in the bedroom. Me and my husband had stopped getting away before I started my affair, so he didn't doubt anything when I started my affair. I finally thought that this could be my ideal life. I had stopped fighting with my husband because there was no need anymore. I was getting those things from both. Everything was finally okay in our life. I didn't get affected when my husband put all his attention to his work. He didn't get angry at me anymore because I had stopped complaining. It was the idle life I had wanted, but it all got ruined until I had to face reality and come to terms with what I had done. One day while I was in the kitchen in the morning, my husband asked if I had seen his blue tie. I had kept it somewhere in the closet but didn't exactly remember where. I told him to look for it in the closet itself. I went back to making breakfast when I heard him coming downstairs with a luxury brand bag. He asked me what this Dior scarf was doing in my closet. I was completely shocked at his question. It had totally slipped my mind that I had hidden my gifts in the closet when I asked him to look there. I started thinking of a lie on the spot, and then eventually told him that it belonged to a friend of mine. She had just told me to keep it here since it's very expensive. She was moving houses and didn't want it to get damaged or lost. He believed me, and then I took the bag from him and told him that I'll keep it back and get his tie on the way back as well. I immediately went and checked if he had seen any other bags, but fortunately for me, it was only this bag. I thought of hiding the gifts somewhere else later. It slipped my mind again to hide the gifts as I got busy with other things. One day, me and the boss were going to a very exclusive VIP event. He had been invited and I was going there as his plus one. I had told my husband that I was going to meet my friend and will help her in packing as she is shifting to a new house. I had told him that it will get late, so I'll spend the night there and then come back home the next day. He told me it was fine to take care. I got dressed in a very beautiful Chanel dress. I couldn't believe my luck. A few months ago, I was window shopping at the mall because I couldn't afford anything, and now I am getting dressed in Chanel. The evening was beautiful. There were many photographers. It was a gallery opening of a celebrity artist, and various celebrities were attending it as well. There were various photographers as well. I didn't pay attention to anything then. Just enjoyed the evening. I wasn't used to being in places with such high-profile people. I then went with the boss to his home and spent the night there with him. I got back home the next day around noon thinking that my husband would be in the office. I didn't expect to find my husband sitting in the living room reading the newspaper. I asked in a casual tone why he didn't go to the office as I made my way to the kitchen to make some coffee for myself. I heard him telling me that he was waiting for me. I thought it was weird, but let it go. He then asked me how my night was. I told him it was nice. I lied to him as to how I helped my friend packing up everything, etc., etc. By the time my story had finished, my husband had come to the kitchen. He looked like he was angry, but I couldn't understand why. I asked him what's wrong, and then he showed me the newspaper where there was a picture of me in his boss's arms. It was from the gallery. The picture was really small, but it was clear that it was me and him. I looked to my husband to tell him something about how it wasn't true, but the anger in his eyes shut me up. He then went and brought all the bags that I had hidden in the closet. I even forget to take the bill out of them. All those bills were signed to his boss. I was literally screwed. My husband got even more angry after that. He told me how I didn't think that I would go so low just for fame and money. He then asked me harshly if I was sleeping with his boss. I had tears in my eyes. There wasn't any point in denying the truth, so I just nodded and kept crying. He looked like he was hurt for a bit, but then told me to get out of his house. He said that he never wants to see my lying face. I tried to go closer to him to hug him and apologize to him, but he stepped back and crossed his arms. He left the house and told me that he wanted me gone by the time he got back home. I called up the boss in tears. I was going to ask him if I could stay over at his place for a few days, but a woman picked up his phone. I asked her who she was, and she told me that she was his fiancée. That was a shock to my system. He had told me that he was single and lived alone in the city. The woman on the line must have known who I was, as she started calling me names for sleeping with her fiancé. I couldn't believe what she was telling me. After getting yelled at, I ended the call. I didn't know what the fuck to do anymore since I had lost my husband and my house and had no place to go. Boss had also lied to me. I had no idea he had a fiancé. I wasn't going to get homeless. I sat in my living room and thought that I was going to convince my husband to forgive me. I had believed that once he gets to know the circumstances which led to everything, he will forgive me, and we would be able to start a new phase of life from that point. I waited anxiously for him to come back home. He came back home after 3 to 4 hours with bloody knuckles. I asked him what had happened, but he didn't reply to me. He looked at me with murder in his eyes and asked me why I was still there. I went to get the first aid box and came to him, but when I touched his shoulder, he pushed me away and then started telling me how everything was fucked up for me. He told me that he had gone to see his boss and punched him. He then told me how he had a fiancé. He laughed when he saw my face in confusion. "The player got played, huh?" he said sarcastically. He told me how his fiancé was living in Canada and they were doing long distance. He then revealed the whole truth that his fiancé had also seen the picture and came here to talk to him. "She will take him back and you will have nowhere to go," he said in an angry whisper. I asked him if she could take him back. Why couldn't he take me back? He then laughed and told me because he wasn't stupid like her. My husband had talked to his boss's fiancée and even convinced her to forgive his fiancé. He knew that if she forgave him, he would end everything with me. He said that he wasn't stupid, that he would end things with me and would keep the option open that I could go with his boss. He then scanned all the bags and looked me in the eye. He told me that I had cheated on him for all this only. He then laughed as my phone rang. His boss was calling me. My husband told me to pick it up. Boss told me that his fiancée gave all the gifts back, so I should send it back to their home. I was shocked but didn't know what else to do. My husband kept smirking at me. I went to my closet and picked out all the gifts that he had given me. My husband was waiting in the living room when I came back. He told me that he had already called the lawyer and soon the divorce proceedings will start. I begged him to give me another chance, but he didn't listen to me. He told me that I was the worst person on this planet and to leave the house immediately. I packed a bag and then left the house. I went to a friend's place. She let me stay in her house for a few nights, but then her husband came back from the trip and she told me it was best that I left her house. Even my closest friend didn't trust me to be around her husband anymore. I then left the house and went to my parents' place. They weren't talking to me as my husband had told them the truth, but they let me stay there for a short while. My husband's lawyers contacted me soon and told me about the divorce proceedings. I started looking for a job, but it was hard to find one since I had no experience. I got married immediately after college. I felt like I had suddenly been in the lowest phase of my life. Just because of greed and desire, I lost one of the most important relationships of my life. The divorce process began, and it was done quite quickly. I expected it to be dragged through a year. I had hoped that maybe within this year, I could seek the forgiveness of my husband. But all hope went to vain, as the process only took 3 months. Even in those 3 months, my husband made sure to have minimum contact with me. His lawyers handled everything from his end, whereas my lawyers represented my side. The court didn't grant me any substantial alimony. All the facts were in favor of my husband, and his lawyers knew what they were doing. My lawyers couldn't do anything. I had already lost everything. My husband, my marriage. I didn't even get to be with my affair partner thanks to my husband. It was all my fault. I cannot blame my husband for what had happened to me, because what he was doing was just a reaction to my actions. Update. It's been a year since my last post. I see all your comments. I know it was my mistake. I was so young back then that I thought I was missing out on my life by being with my husband. I thought that his hard work and struggle was not of any importance, and I realize now how stupid that was. I have taken a job as a nanny. It doesn't pay well, but it's something which is better than nothing. I shifted to a studio apartment in the not-so-good location of the city. I feel like I have lost hope of anything good happening to me now. I have become the wife who slept with husband's boss just because she wanted expensive gifts. Everyone who knows what has happened looks at me with disgust in their eyes. I just keep my head down in shame, my heart filled with guilt for what I have done. My ex-husband, on the other hand, is doing really well. He got a promotion at work. He wears expensive suits now. He's on the ladder of success while I'm on the road to hell. I've heard from someone that he had also started dating someone really hot. I feel happy for him even though I'm sad for myself. I could have been that woman beside him enjoying all the luxuries if I had patience to stick with him in his struggling times. He deserves all the success that is coming his way. He deserved every bit of it, while I deserve all the hurt and feeling of shame I feel every day. Thank you everyone for listening till here.
I've done something that's making it difficult for me to think straight. My husband wants a divorce from me now because I got carried away with his father at our annual New Year's party. In fact, I think I've done something stupid, and I'm now facing the consequences of it. I'm not even going to try to make myself look good or seek validation because there's absolutely nothing I'll say that will not paint me out as a good person at all. I've messed up big time and I'm 100% aware of it. I just need help from you all. I'll take any help I can get. I just want to make sure that I can get this whole thing fixed. My name is Brianna, and I'm a 29 years old accountant. I'm married to Luke, a 30-year-old accountant. Yes, my husband and I are accountants, and you can very well say that it's our mutual careers that brought us together. We met at a function together and got interested in each other. I loved his personality and charisma a lot, and for the first time, I broke my rule of never wanting to date a man that does the same thing I do. I never wanted to date someone that has the same profession as me because I just felt like it will make us disagree a lot, and there'll be no time because we'll be engaged in different activities. But I had no choice, ladies and gentlemen, lol. I got charmed by Luke, and I forgot all about my rule. In fact, I didn't think we'd last at first. I thought it would just be a fling because I didn't think Luke was ready to settle down. At least I'll speak for myself when I say that I wasn't ready to settle down yet. I'd been single for 6 months before I started dating Luke, and I never imagined getting married to him 2 years later. But it happened, and we got married and never looked back. Well, we never looked back until now. Now, I think I'm losing my husband, and that's just me hanging on to an invisible thread of hope. I feel like I've lost him already. What hurts me the most is that his father is involved. Luke hates his father, and now I've screws up. The name of Luke's father is Adrian, and he's 48 years old. He had Luke when he was just 18 years old. He met Luke's mother, Nancy, when they were in high school, and they dated till their final year of high school. But Nancy got pregnant just after they were done with high school. They were both 18 years old, but they were still naive. Nancy's mother was sent out of her home and forced to live with Adrian. They basically started a family immediately. Nancy couldn't go to college, but Adrian was able to go. Long story short, Adrian cheated on Nancy 2 years after she gave birth to Luke. They broke up, and Adrian never bothered seeing Luke again till he was in college. Luke was never ready to accept his father back into his life because his mother always told him how he left her. Adrian always tried getting back into Luke's life, but Luke promised never to betray his mother. So, I hope you guys now understand why what I did is a very big deal. Luke cannot stand seeing me, and he's very upset. But wait, before you start judging me, let me make it clear that I didn't have an affair with Luke's father. I would never, and I have never. It's disgusting and stupid, and I never did that. It's just that something happened at our New Year party, and I'm on the verge of losing my husband. Luke and I have been married for 2 years now, and we always find time to attend the New Year's celebration Nancy throws. Nancy is now married to another man, and he's the one that stepped up to be Luke's father. He's quite rich, so he likes to throw a New Year's party every year. Luke always makes sure he never misses it, and even while we were dating, he always invited me. I think I've gone to a total of 4 New Year's parties with him. The first one I went as his friend, the second one as his girlfriend, and the third and fourth one as his wife. But now, I don't think I can make it to the 5th New Year's party. I don't think Luke will stay married to me till then. There's usually no drama at each New Year party, but this year's own was immensely exceptional. There was a lot of drama, and I'm still shocked at how things just escalated all of a sudden. I'm writing this to you all barely 24 hours after the New Year's party. Writing is my way of venting and keeping my emotions in check, so when I found myself in this compromising situation, I decided to write as my way of letting off some steam. The drama started from Adrian's sudden presence at the New Year's party. Yes, you actually read that right. He suddenly showed up at the New Year's party. Luke and I were shocked, but Luke was the one I was really worried for. He always told me how much he hated his father and despised his presence. I know the pain he feels anytime the topic of his father's betrayal is brought up. I'm sure any man that didn't even grow up to see his father would feel the same. Whenever he told me stories about his father, I never tried to convince him to forgive him. I never tried playing the devil's advocate because I know the man I married would never hate someone without a valid reason. That's why I know that for him to ask for a divorce, I screwed up, and I'm not denying that. I'm at fault, and I'm wrong for getting carried away. I never should have done something to upset Luke so much. I would have felt better if it was somebody else. I despise myself for hurting him through his father. If I knew this would happen, I would have taken another decision that day. But I guess if wishes were horses, beggars would fly as high as they wanted. Before the New Year's party, Adrian had always been showing up whenever he wanted. He always did that before. But whenever he came, the gatekeeper always took care of him. Luke didn't even have to see him most times. He just got to know from his mother that Adrian showed up. Before I go on, I'd like to describe Adrian as the perfect definition of an opportunist and selfish bastard. I hate him with every living fiber in me, and I believe that he should never be happy after what he'd done that day. I'm at fault for falling in his trap, but that doesn't mean I'll not wish that his karma finds him. He left his family, but never expected them to end up getting successful. So he came back years later and thought it was best to ruin their lives all over again. I never really had an encounter with him before. I'd only seen him once, and that was when he gate deadhead our wedding event. That was the only time I'd seen him, but I always recognized him from the pictures that were hung on Nancy's gate. It was so her gatekeeper could recognize him and never let him in. He was only able to get into the New Year's party because the gatekeeper had been on leave as he traveled to go celebrate the New Year's with his own family. It was someone else that had been tending to the gate, and the person had not been careful enough to take notes of the faces coming in. Adrian used that opportunity to get into the party. On that particular day, Luke and I had a very intense argument. If you're wondering how intense our argument was, it was actually very intense, and we almost didn't attend the party. We were having an argument about trying to have a child. Luke was ready, and I wasn't ready because I was being considered for promotion at work. I knew that getting pregnant would automatically mean that I wouldn't get the promotion again, so that made me very worried. I've always wanted children, but I thought that we had time, and there was no need to rush. I didn't want to rush into it and end up resenting myself and blaming other people for my choices. I also love my job a lot, and I've always worked hard so I could get promoted and just feel like my hard work helped me get something. That's why I wanted to wait till I had my promotion for about a year before we tried having children. My decision made Luke very angry because he felt like he had given me enough time. In his defense, he's actually right, because before we got married, we agreed to try having children 2 years after our marriage. I thought my promotion would come a little later, but then I was surprised when I was told I was on the list. That's why I told Luke to wait a little longer, but he wasn't having it. Our argument lasted close to an hour, and we never came to any reasonable resolution. We were in no position to attend a party, but because Luke always promised his mother that he'd never miss any of those parties, we had to keep that promise and go. We didn't speak to each other throughout the car ride, and even when we got to the venue, we ignored each other. I've never been known to handle my alcohol. In fact, it's common knowledge among his family and mine that I'm a very bad drinker, but because of how angry and irritated I'd been, I had too many shots. I don't even know what was mixed in those drinks, but I just took anything the waiter had in his tray. I felt comfortable drinking because I believed that I was safe in Nancy's house with Luke around. I knew almost all the faces that attended the party, and even though Luke and I were not in speaking terms, I still believed that I had no reason to worry. It was an annual New Year's party that I'd attended 4 times in a row. I didn't think I'd see someone that would want to take advantage of my drunken state. So, barely 30 minutes after drinking, I had to run to the toilet to puke. I'd drank too much and was having a hard time standing up straight. I didn't see Luke around, and I was afraid of puking in front of everyone, so I went alone. Before I got back to the party, I stumbled upon Adrian. I still remember seeing him in the hallway, and he asked what was wrong with me. Yes, I was drunk, but I can remember that part. I don't handle alcohol well, even if it's a glass of wine, so I'm sure whatever I took was not enough to wipe out my memory. It was just my body system acting out like it usually did whenever I took alcohol. I recognized Adrian the moment I saw him, and then I asked him what he was doing at the party. He said some things I don't remember, and then he offered to hold my hand so I could stand upright. I refused to hold his hand at first, because even though I wasn't thinking straight, I knew that the fact that Adrian was dressed like he wanted to conceal his identity meant that he had bad intentions in mind. But Adrian didn't give up, and he kept pestering me to take his hand. In that process, showed up. I don't remember everything that happened, but I know that Luke got into an argument with Adrian and questioned him because he saw both of us standing alone. I was still upset with him, so I left both of them standing there. I went back to the party and decided to take a seat because I felt like the alcohol was going to make me dizzy. While I was sitting there, Luke came to sit beside me. He was very angry, and then he asked me why I was alone with his father. I explained everything to him, but he was still upset. He then warned me never to speak to his father again. While Luke and I were having the back and forth, Adrian showed up and tried causing a scene. He told me he pitied me because I was letting a man dictate who I spoke to. He started saying things to get into my head, and he accused Luke of being a controlling husband. He took advantage of the situation because he noticed my drunken state and wanted to use that to his advantage. Luke didn't say anything because the guests were starting to look our way, and he didn't want to embarrass his mother and draw more attention. If you're wondering what happened that made Luke ask for a divorce, then you're in luck. because that's what I'm about to say. Adrian asked me for a dance while I was seated with Luke. Luke told me not to dance with him, and then he walked me to sit down while he went to call the gatekeeper so he could escort Adrian out. After he left, Adrian managed to convince me to dance with him, and he told me he had something important to tell me. Yes, that's all he said to me, and I foolishly took his hand and started dancing with him. I don't really remember what we spoke about while dancing, but I know we didn't do anything inappropriate because I asked his mother just a few hours ago, and she assured me that all we did was dance. She was the one that narrated most of the things that happened to me, but she told me Adrian held my waist, and I didn't shrug his hands off. I danced with him, and while we were dancing, Luke came back with the gatekeeper and saw me dancing with his father. He was very angry, and he tried separating us, but I lashed out at him and called him a control freak in front of everyone. Yes, I did that, and I'm not going to deny it because I remember doing that to him. I let my anger over our argument get to my head, and then I lashed out at him for no reason. I also let myself get swayed by his father's words, and that was wrong. I understand why he's angry because it felt like I chose to listen to his father instead of him. It felt like I picked Adrian over Luke, and I made it seem like I was judging him based on his father's words. He hates his father, and he's told me that almost every day. For me to have let myself get loose like that meant that I used his weakness against him. I'm wrong, and I'm disgusted with myself. According to his mother, Nancy, Luke left the party immediately after I called him a control freak. She told me that he appeared to be very angry, and he didn't even speak to her before he left. That's the first time he's done something like that, and it's my fault. I'm so ashamed right now because I cannot believe that I caused such a scene on such a special day. I let my thoughts get into my head, and I ruined my marriage. How could he forgive me? I know I messed up big time. I'm even embarrassed that Nancy bathed me and helped me change my clothes. According to her, I was quite drunk after everything, and I was puking a lot. I can't believe I started my new year out like this. I'm also quite disappointed because I know it must have also been hard for Nancy to watch her daughter-in-law dance with the same man that left her and her son. The fact that she's suppressing her feelings and helping me out makes my guilt worse. I disrespected her too. I shouldn't have done what I did. I should have controlled my emotions. Getting promoted at work is not more than having a peaceful marriage. I called him a control freak because I thought he was trying to control my life by dictating when I got pregnant. That must have made him very upset. But what's worse is the fact that I danced with his father and let him hold my waist. I don't know why Adrian even did what he did. What does he stand to get by dancing with me? I don't know if he has any ulterior motives because it honestly doesn't make any sense. What does he stand to gain by telling me all those things about his son? He kept coming back and asking for a chance back into his son's life. Why does he think doing that would bring his son closer to him? I hold a grudge, and I plan on making Adrian explain himself. If I didn't mess up by drinking, I would not even give him the time of day to begin with. It's not his fault. I'm the irresponsible adult that allowed things to get out of hand. I'm still at Nancy's place because she advised me not to go see him. She's his mother, and she knows that when he's angry, he likes to have time alone. I also know that about him, and that's why I've not tried going to see him. But barely 6 hours ago, Luke came here and asked to see me. I was very happy because I foolishly thought that he was going to forgive me. I fell on my knees and begged him with tears in my eyes. I told him I was extremely sorry and that I didn't mean to hurt him. At first, he just stood there and didn't say a word, but after some time, he told me he wanted a divorce. I was shocked. In fact, I was beyond shocked because I wasn't expecting that from him. I thought I heard something else, and I asked him to repeat himself again. He did that and said exactly what he said before. I held his clothes and told him I was sorry. I tried everything, but his kind was made up. He told me he wanted a divorce and that he couldn't stand the fact that I teamed up with his father to embarrass him. I tried to make him understand that I wasn't in my right senses, but then he dropped another shocking revelation. He told me he also felt it was best for us to break up because he didn't see the need of staying married to a woman that didn't have the same parental choices like he did. He also demanded an apology to his mother. That was all he said before leaving me alone once again. In other words, he wants to ruin me because there's nothing more hurtful than the thought of losing him. I really hoped things would be right, but I guess it's not happening. I thought he'd forgive me, but he didn't. Do I blame him? Absolutely not. I do not blame him for the things he did because I know he's only reacting to what I did. I'm the one that deserves to be blacked. But I'm selfish. I just can't end my marriage like this. I want to make it work. I want him to forgive me. I don't want my desire to get promoted to get in between our marriage. My husband deserved more and I want to make it up to him. I can't let his vengeful father get in between us, and I can't let my wrong choices ruin our 4 years of knowing each other. I need help, guys. Any ideas would be very much appreciated. I'll appreciate whatever you guys suggest. Just please help me out because I'm tired and I'm giving up. Update. First of all, I want to tell you all that I'm immensely grateful for all you've written and suggested. I never imagined so many suggestions, and I really want to say a big thank you. After updating you all that day, that was on January 1st, I decided to go see Adrian and give him a piece of my mind. I wanted to know why he thought it was right for him to do what he did. I couldn't sleep just thinking about how he had the audacity to hold my waist and dance with me when he could see that I was drunk. It was hard finding his place because I'd never been there before, and I never thought I'd have a reason to go there. But life happened, and I had to ask someone to ask around for the location of his apartment. I finally found it, and the surprising thing was that I saw his wife and 2 children there too. I knew he started his own family because I'd heard Nancy talking about it before. What I just couldn't understand was why he decided to keep tormenting Luke and Nancy when he'd already moved on with his life. Long ago, when I saw him at his apartment, I asked him that, and he told me he was just trying to have his son back because he thought it was unfair that Nancy was the one at the receiving end of his care. Adrian felt like Luke was supposed to give him money now that he's a successful accountant. That's why he kept on coming and trying to get back into Luke's life. He felt like he was being cheated. When I asked him why he held my waist and danced with me, he told me that was his only way of getting Luke's attention. Yes, in other words, Adrian is a big bag of crap. I left his apartment immediately because I knew it was pointless talking to someone that was so entitled to something they didn't ever work hard for. I was very angry, but there was absolutely nothing I could do. I went back to our house, but Luke served me divorce papers instead. While I stayed with Nancy, he got the divorce papers ready. I guess I started my new year with getting divorced. He's not ready to charge his mind even though I'm hurt, I understand. He's a man that holds a grudge on his father. There's nothing I can do to validate my actions that day. He can never unsee his wife picking his father's side and insulting him. Even though we get back together, he'll always remember that day. And then there's the issue of having a child. He's not ready to wait, and I'm not ready now. I tried doing everything you guys suggested, but I've decided to let it go. I know that I am not ready to be a mother, and he's very sure he's ready to be a father. If I get promoted now, we'll have to wait another 2 years, and he's not ready. Nancy strictly believes that we're getting divorced over something very trivial, but there's nothing she can do. Her son is a man of his own, and she cannot question his marital life. It's a sad goodbye, but I had to say it anyway. I'm just thankful we don't work in the same back, because that would have stung. It would have been hard to see him every day, knowing we're going through a divorce. At the end of the day, I take full responsibility for my actions, and I believe that with these lessons I've learned, I'd never act recklessly in the future ever again.